Thank you, Philip, for those beautiful songs that we can sing together. I know you didn't come here to hear me talk about political things, but I'm going to mention a couple of political things in my lesson, but they're not the main point. As you may have gathered from the reading that Ryan read, the main point is compassion. And that's what this lesson is about. And what true compassion is and what it is not. And so much in our life we hear people saying, I did this because I had compassion and I wanted to do. And you find out that the things that they did were not compassion, they were something else. Often it seems that we have deleterious government programs that are continued in the name of compassion. And if you question them, you get labeled. Well, you don't even care about these people. You don't care about this. It's not the question that it's ridiculous, but this, you get labeled like that. Compassion, true compassion, is a feeling of sorrow or pity for the misfortunes of others. That's the simplest thing. But it doesn't tell the whole story. The word comes from the Latin compassio. It simply means sympathy. When you have sympathy for someone, it means you feel something about their plight. Right. You're aware of it, you know things are there. It doesn't mean you've done anything, it just means that's how you feel. So that's where the word comes from. If you want to look at it a little bit more, it says to have a consideration for or have mercy on another person. By extension, we get the word compassion, which means to be kind in action. Action. You got compassion is different than sympathy. Compassion is you're aware, you have sympathy, you're concerned about it, but there's an action that you're going to do something about it. Right? So that's the idea. And when we look at what people say and do, they don't always get it right. Many people today will claim that the intention of a policy is compassion for the poor, when in reality it makes their plight worse. So what I'm saying there is that compassion or a policy has to be measured not by the words that are instituted, but by the results that come later on. Because by the results you'll know whether it's truly compassion or it's something else. I'll give you an example of our welfare state. Every state in the Union has people on welfare. And there's nothing wrong with welfare because it helps those who cannot really help themselves. And during the Depression in the 1930s, this is why it was set up, because there were people who were homeless and there were no jobs. They simply could not find work and they were going to starve. The government stepped in and started welfare. And it was designed to end in a few years. As soon as the Depression was over, it was supposed to stop. The problem is it didn't. So today we're left with generations of people who believe the government owes them a living. We notice that if you look at all the problems that there is with welfare, there's generations, there's families of 3 or 4 generations who have never had a real job. They're using welfare to live on. And this is not what it's supposed to be, and this is not compassion. Initially, it was set up to help them, but you're giving a handout. Now, there was a compassionate program, that was called the WWW, and I always forget the W, but it was the workforce. People who wanted to work, you had government projects, you went to work and you got paid. So there you're getting paid, but you're doing something. It was reciprocity. Where welfare is, we just give you this. It was done in the name of compassion, but it was not compassion. You know, God told Moses that he would have compassion on whom he would have compassion and have mercy on those he would have compassion. So if we think about this, this is telling us that compassion is rooted back in God. It starts back with God. So when we're dealing with compassion, God needs to be connected with it in some fashion, some way. Paul mentioned this in Romans 9:15, and it comes from Exodus 33:19. And God decides who should have compassion, who is really needy. Not needy because you say you're needy, but needy because you really are. And we know there's a difference, because people say, oh, I need this and I need that. You got a job? Not so much. Have you looked for a job? Well, 2 years ago I looked for a job.
Yeah.
Are you ill or? No, why don't you have a job? Well, I won't work at McDonald's. Well, why not? That's beneath me. Oh, but being on welfare is not beneath you. So you run into these things all the time. When God had compassion on Moses, remember Moses was having a lot of problems with the Israelites. They were ready to stone him. You brought us out here to die. We were better off in Egypt. There's supposed to be water here. There's no water. There's no food and everything. He pleads with God. God has compassion on Moses and sends them water. He sends them food. And Moses is able to go on and do his job of leading the people out of Egypt. You know, for most of the history of the United States, we have had men who were what I consider itinerant. Itinerant means they don't have a home. You had what we call hobos, all right? They'd go from town to town, do a little bit, make a couple dollars, king of the road, that idea. You had ranch hands that would do this out west. And on the coast, all along the coast, you had sailors. They had no permanent home. They'd get a job on one ship, come off, spend all their money, go get a job on another ship. They were homeless. But these guys always wanted to work. There was a difference. Most of them were willing to work. However, in the last 50 years or so, this has really changed. Beginning in the 1960s with what we call the student demonstrations, progressive liberal thing, and the communist influence. The rules are not good, we're going to change the rules, we don't like this, we don't like that, the rebellious attitude. And then in the 80s, there was quite a block in Congress that decided that most of the mental hospitals are really evil institutions, because they really don't help the people, and it costs a lot of money to support them, so we're going to get rid of them. And from the 80s through the 90s, on us. And a lot of them needed to be in those kinds of places because they were not good for civil society. What happens is, as of 2023, there were about 750,000 homeless people in the United States. That went up 18% in 2024 to about 885,000. I don't know what the number is now. It's probably 1 million homeless. Well, 1 million out of 300,000, 300 million is not much. Yeah, but where do they congregate? In the cities. In the cities. You have major districts in cities where you cannot walk down the street because there's people urinating and defecating in the street. You have all kinds of diseases, leptospirosis, hepatitis, typhus, tuberculosis, crime, filth. You see people lying on the sidewalk. They're drug addicted. And this is terrible. And yet, we're helping these people. Well, how are you helping them? Well, we have a food kitchen and we're going to feed them. And you know what? We're giving out needles so they don't have to share their needles when they take their drugs. But what is the result of this? You have more homelessness and you have more drug addicted. Doesn't it seem that if we wanted to solve the problem, we should go back to the cause? If you want to stop somebody or help somebody who's a drug addict, you don't provide them with a safe house to take drugs. And you don't provide them with you go back and you figure out some way to do it. And we have had many people who have suggested many programs, and they're, oh, that's not compassionate. You're too tough. When you raise a child, what is it? It's tough love sometimes, right? Sometimes you have to do what you have to do when you raise that child, because if you don't, tried to do that, when I say the minority of the people in this area, and we had this progressive liberal thing, oh, we have to be compassionate, we have to help them, we have to do, we're eliminating, we're lowering their diseases through drug needles. No, you're not. You increase the drug use, is what they did. All the statistics prove that it didn't help anything. So you have these homeless people, most of them have diagnoses as mental illness, about 2/3 of them. About 25 to 30% are hardcore drug addicts. And a lot of those people have both problems. They have mental illness and they're drug addicts. It's not a good thing. It's not compassion. These government agencies that do this, they think they're helping the people, and they give them the illusion of freedom. That is, you're not in a mental institution, and now you're free. You're not going to be arrested if you do drugs. You have the freedom to do this, but there's no responsibility that true freedom has. If you're free, you have a responsibility. There's certain things that you have to agree to be free. You have to be aware of other people. You have to take care of yourself, take care of your family. You have to do things that are right. So we have this problem. And, you know, we could go on with all hundreds of other things. These policies persist generation after generation, year after year, under this umbrella of kindness and compassion. And we talk to our illustrious leaders, and they get down to this point where they say, oh, we have to do something. But they don't want to do the hard work to really make these things work. They want to take the easy way out. So they label it compassion. And what they're doing is signaling to us that they're virtuous people. Oh, we want to do the right thing. We're trying to do the right thing. So they send that signal. But what is the results? The results is they're increasing the problem. How about our educational system? You know, there's some places where you go, they say it should be teaching math, reading, and sciences. It's been replaced by culture diversity. Health science classes are now being used to indoctrinate children to accept alternate lifestyles as normal. And it's okay for males to go into the females' locker rooms and then participate as females in sports. Now, this is ridiculous stuff, but it's happening. It's happening because these people aren't doing under the guise, we're trying to help and do the right thing. I could go on and on about examples such as gender reaffirming care and legalizing marijuana. They're pernicious programs, which means they eat away things. They eat away at society and our culture. And they're changing it into something we don't even recognize anymore. Well, okay. What did Jesus do about this stuff? Because isn't that the key, what we'd like to know? What did Jesus do about problems that he came upon? And believe me, their society had problems just like we have. There's no society that ever was that didn't have all these little problems. Let's take a look at it. Matthew tells us in chapter 9 that Jesus had been going through the cities and the villages. And he was teaching in the synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. So that sets the standards. He's teaching and preaching and healing. You notice he's got a couple things there. He's taking care of their spiritual needs, and he's taking care of their physical needs. That's when it says Jesus had compassion. When he has compassion, he's going to do something about it. He takes care of the spiritual side, and he takes care of the physical side. Matthew 9:36, which Ryan read earlier. When Jesus saw the crowds, he was moved with compassion for them. That is sympathy in action. He had a plan. And why? And why did he have sympathy? The Bible tells us right here. Because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. You drive through some parts of Chicago, and you see these people there. There is no leadership, no shepherds. They are helpless. They're out in the cold, they're out in the hot sun, lying on the sidewalk. Later in Matthew 14:14, we can read, when Jesus landed, he was in a boat, when he landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, and he healed their sick. He understood that they were there for a reason. They needed something, and he provided that for them. Mark tells us in Mark 1:41 that Jesus was moved with compassion when he touched the man who had leprosy. Now, to even be near a person with leprosy, in those days, the Jewish law says, no way, this guy was supposed to go through the street saying, unclean, unclean, so people could stand back. Jesus touches this guy, and they go, oh. They go, how can you do that? The leper had said, if you are willing, you can heal me. And Jesus said, I am willing, be clean. And immediately the man was cleansed. So he saw people would look to him and realize, this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. How about the widow in Nain, whose only son had died? When the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her. He comforted her. First thing she needed is comfort. She's weeping. This is her only son. Now, in those days, we didn't have, you couldn't go to an old folks home. You didn't have any of that stuff. Your family took care of you, or you were out the street. Her only son, excuse me. Her only son had died. And he's in the coffin. The guys are holding him, taking him out to bury him. And he tells her, do not weep. It's a command. Oh, don't worry, I'll take it. No, he said, do not weep. When he came to the open coffin, he said, young man, I say to you, arise. So he who was dead sat up and began to speak, and Jesus presented him to his mother. So he comforted her soul, and then he took care of the problem. That is compassion, because it's the sympathy, to feel what the other person feels. Some people call it empathy. But then to do something about it. In each instance, Jesus identified the problem. Did Michael go to get me a drink of water? I looked here. I usually have one here. I don't have it. Excuse me. But in each instance, Jesus identified a problem, formed a plan, and did it. Now, that's compassion. Remember what Matthew told us in chapter 9. He taught, he preached, and then he took care of the problem. That's compassion. That's what we should be doing. When we compare this to some of the things that are going on in our country today, I think we can see that there's a great difference. This theme that they have is, we must do something. I've heard this, well, we got to do something. Okay. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it, brother. Excuse me, folks. I hope you didn't spike this, Michael. Oh, that's good. That's compassion. He saw the problem. He felt for me, and he went and took care of the problem. There's an example right here, right there. Thank you, Michael. This theme of we must do something, I've heard this so many times, and then they go off and do things, and then they never look at the results. They never say, well, what really happened? James tells us that this phenomena, we must do something, this promise of solving a problem when the real problem is ignored is not new. James in chapter 2, verse 16 says, if a brother or a sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, depart in peace, be warmed and be filled, but he does not give them things they need for their body, what does it profit? Empty words. Now, of course, we know James is talking about the idea with faith, that faith without works is dead. And I'm going to tell you, compassion is faith's brother, because compassion, or the illusion of compassion, without the works of the acts to go with it, it's also useless and dead. I know some people would say, but we're trying to help these people. Well, how do we have compassion? We're trying to help them. I said, okay, fine. What are the results of your help? If it's not working, don't do it anymore. Try something else. But what do? Year after year after year, you'll see the same programs going through our legislature. If your efforts actually decrease homelessness, I'm all for it. If they decrease drug use, I'm all for it. If they decrease child trafficking, I'm all for it. Or one of the other hundreds of things that we could do. As as it is, all these things seem to be increasing. The value of help is not measured by intention. Let me say this again. The value of help is not measured by intention. Because we all have intentions. We want to solve the problem. But you can't measure it by the intention. The value of a proposed helping action is if the action produces measurable positive results. Think about your own lives. You try something, it doesn't work. Well, I'm not going to do that again, right? We do this all the time. You try something else. Or say, well, I tried that, didn't work. Well, why didn't it work? You start to analyze it. You paint something, and a couple days later, the paint bubbles. Well, that paint's no good. Well, maybe it's not the paint. Maybe you didn't prepare the surface. So you slap more paint on the bubbles, what's going to happen? You just get bigger bubbles. So you got to go back, so you're measuring the results. You look at the results, you analyze, see what's wrong. Can we tweak this? Can we make it better? Do I strip it all down? Whatever it may be, but that's what you do. That's what we do all the time. Yet when we get to our leaders, the illustrious leaders, they don't do this. They do it in their own lives. If they paint their house and it doesn't work, they figure out why. But for the rest of us, oh, that's good enough. Because we have to do something. You know, there's an ingredient that many of our leaders do not put into their recipe for help. One ingredient that they're missing. You cannot make a long-term change in society or in individuals if God is absent from the plan.
Yeah.
God has got to be in that plan. If he's not in that plan, it is doomed to failure. All the way back in Genesis chapter 6, verse 5, it says, Then Yahweh observed that every intention of the thoughts of their hearts was evil continually. And why was that? Because they were the sons of men. They had gotten away from God. God was not in their lives. It tells us about the sons of God, those who were the believers who worshiped God. They were blessed, and things went well for them. As mankind drifted away from God, they drifted where? You just don't drift aimlessly. No, you drift. If you're out in the sea, you drift aimlessly. But if you're a person, a human being, if you're not close to God, you're drifting away towards Satan. That's the only way it goes. You just don't drift around for nothing. You drift one or two ways. You go towards God or you go away from God, and that's towards Satan. A lot of these things that I see happening today, I've come to believe, this is Satan behind these things. Look at the communist nations. Satan is behind those. Godless nations. There's a great effort here over the last 50 years to make us a godless nation, but I'm telling you something here. I've seen some things that are changing my mind. You know, this nation of ours was actually grounded on Christian principles. Most of the pundits like to say Judeo-Christian principles, but it's basically Christian principles. Each person has the right to life, to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we've shed a lot of blood over the last 250 years, haven't we? Man, there's been a lot of blood flowing from this country. Why is that? Because this country is one of the few that self-corrects. When the others shed blood, they go one way or the other. What we do is we come back and visit the Constitution again, and the amendments and the Bill of Rights, and we get rid of some of the problems we had. We correct it. But it costs blood. It costs a lot of anguish. We get it wrong, but our nature is to keep going back and trying to correct it. And this is unique among nations. We're not perfect. We'll never be perfect. Let's face it. There's only one perfect place that we know of, and that's with the Lord in heaven. But we're trying to do things right, and we're trying to make an effort. We're trying to have compassion on ourselves by choosing actions and then looking at those actions and say, what is the result? Is it good or bad? And if it's good, let's continue it. If it's bad, let's change it. We're one of the few nations in the whole world in which the power is the people have the power. Almost every other nation, the government has the power. They say, well, we don't have to. Yes, you do, because you vote, and your vote counts. I know there's voting fraud. We could talk about it. I don't want to go into that. But the fact is that we do have a say in who our leaders are going to be. Most of us don't pay much attention to it. Maybe we should pay more attention to that. Elects itself to be the government. If you look at England, yeah, the people vote there, but really it's the English Parliament which keeps it in. They just go back and forth from one side to the other. This is one of the reasons why dissent and voting is so important here. You have a right to say, I don't like that, it's wrong, and I'm not voting for you if you keep doing that. This is how we make change, and you know the wheels of nations turn very, very slowly. So changes don't happen overnight, but I do see some things changing. I see less liberal, progressive things getting through Congress in both our state and in our federal government. I see more resistance to things like gender affirmative actions. I see more resistance to keeping God out of our nation. I've heard politicians thanking God for what has happened. I even heard one of them say, an elected official, say that we should all get down on our knees and thank God for what we have. Now, some of the other people we've had, would you ever imagine hearing that on a TV station? So these are signs that things are changing. And you don't have to love the guy in office. You don't even have to like him. But you have to recognize what are the results of what he's doing, or she is doing, whoever it may be. Let's look at the results. There's some people I wouldn't like to sit down and have an iced tea with. I just don't care for their personalities. But look at the results of what's happening here. And I see those, Jim for years has always prayed that something would galvanize this nation and begin to turn it back to God. I think I'm seeing that. And I think that I want them to live in a good Christian-based nation. And these are good things when you hear these things and you hear politicians doing this. And they're including God in their decisions. There's one guy in particular who's not in office right now, but he's become a commentator. And some of you may have seen some of the things he says. His name is Nick Freitas. And he was a former SEAL. He was in the Virginia legislature. And he has some really good comments. And he always ends his thing on YouTube. He's got a big coffee cup and it always has letters on there. Like, not today. If you want to, try it. Or he's always got something on his coffee cup. But he's a good commentator because he parses these things out. And I'm amazed because we didn't have that. We didn't have these people on the other side getting time to say these things. And I think that's excellent. I think that's healthy. I've used this illustration once before. You all know what a grandfather clock is. It has a big pendulum. Right? Swings back and forth. When is the only time that thing is balanced? When the pendulum is straight down, it's balanced. But if you put it there, the clock doesn't tell time. Which tells me it's got to swing to the right and swing to the left in order to tell time. Excuse me. I'm almost done. I got to take one more swig. Good stuff you put in there, Michael.
It's all natural.
Aquavitae. So here's the thing. You like the stuff going on the right, and the pendulum is in the middle, and it starts swinging your way. Oh, great, it's coming my way, it's coming my way. Look at this. And when it gets there, it hesitates for a second because it's got to reverse. They say, great, things are really going our way. And it starts going, no, stop. And it swings all the way to, this is our country. We have these swings in persuasion. We swing left, and we swing right. But when we average it out, we come to the middle. And right now I see us swinging to the right, and I see more good things. And I think we could keep the pendulum more the way we want it if we voice our opinions. If we vote, we do those things. 250 years. There's not a lot of countries that last 250 years. Not in constancy with the freedoms we have. So if you want to say this is my 4th of July speech, I guess you could say that. I didn't really intend it that way. God has blessed us with an abundance of freedom, abundance of everything we ever needed. He's blessed us with these things. But if we don't get it right with Him, we're going to lose all that. It's up to each individual, each one of us, to make sure that when we vote, we have to look and say, what is the results? What has this person done? Is this person going towards Christian values, or are they going away from Christian values? If they're going away from Christian values, you may like them. Maybe a great speaker, maybe handsome or beautiful, whatever it may be. But if they're going away from Christian values, how are you going to stand before God and say, yeah, I voted for him? He said, that's my enemy. You voted for my enemy. So we need to make sure that we support these people if we can do that. Brothers and sisters, I appreciate your time. I'd like to remind you that when we add people to God's family, there's only one way that that's done, and that's through immersion. And that's, if we look in the New Testament, we see time and time again that after these people made the good confession saying that they believed that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, He's the Messiah, the Savior, they're told to get up and be immersed for the forgiveness of your sins and wash that soul clean, which has been sullied by the world. You come up out of the water, your soul is clean. God adds you to our number. Now, that doesn't mean that we're all 100% clean all the time, but He provides an avenue to make that happen, which is forgiveness. And through forgiveness, we can keep our souls clean and we can learn. And we also, I don't know about you, but I pray, Lord, help me with this. I can't do this by myself. I keep doing the same stupid thing over and over again. I know it's not right. You put it in His hand and it works. He'll help you correct those things, and He forgives us of our sins. And we are then His children. And someday, when you stand before the bar, before Jesus, and He says, okay, you want Him to say, well done, good and faithful servant. Come on over here. You don't want to say, get over there with those guys, because they're going someplace you don't even want to know them. Where the fire never stops. Where the worm never stops. You don't want to go there. That's our choice. You can have that choice. You have that choice today. If you're subject to that call, Brother Phil's going to lead us in a song. Join me at the front. If you have something that needs prayers from the congregation, I'll also entertain that. Come on up here, tell me what it is, and we'll offer a prayer. Brother Phil.
There is a fountain